Zelda bosses can be amazing, like stepping out into an abandoned, forgotten arena, the musty air thick with fog which clouds your vision, only to discover the remains of some long-dead beast, a titanic, horned skeleton half buried in the sands. Then, out of the darkness, the King of Twilight materializes, using a scimitar to pour his magic into the fossil, awakening it into some twisted new life before vanishing into the shadows, leaving you alone with the monster. After a battle against the skeleton and a horde of undead soldiers, using the item found within the dungeon to crush its spine, the beast finally falls, life fading from its eyes once more. But it's not the end. After using the spinner to raise a platform, the skeleton reawakens, only its head remains, eyes burning with malice, and the second phase begins. A fast-paced, intense duel where Link avoids the beast's fireballs by riding up the rails on the spinner. A good Zelda boss not only poses a fun challenge, but fits with its respective dungeon. Like the Arbiter's Grounds, the harrowing ruins of a site once used for a dark purpose, Stalord is a mysterious, forgotten creature that hints to an even more sinister past for the grounds in which it lies. What was this terrifying beast? Who were the soldiers that reanimate alongside it? However, not all Zelda bosses are as fun or as imposing as Stalord. Instead of invoking a feeling of awe when they appear before you for the first time, some just leave you with a feeling of, huh. So today, let's go through not Zelda's best or most fun bosses, or even its worst or most infuriating. Let's look at Zelda bosses which were simply underwhelming. Bosses where you maybe fought your way through a dungeon, found a new powerful item, readied yourself for the final battle, only to be met with complete disappointment, whether it was because of the boss's design, lore, or the battle itself. Obviously, it goes without saying that this list is my own opinion. You might love some of these bosses, they're just ones that I, personally, was underwhelmed by. So subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content, and let's get into it. The Sand Ship is one of the best dungeons in Skyward Sword. It's a vessel designed to protect Nehru's flame, manned by a crew of ancient robots. The ship was seized by pirates in the past, sailing the ancient sea while cloaked, invisible to the naked eye, a defense mechanism designed to help protect the sacred flame. Link hunts down the Sand Ship and is able to damage it enough to stop it sailing and deactivate the cloaking device, allowing him to board. While in the present, the ship sits idle in the Sand Sea, in the distant past it sails a deep ocean, from the depths of which rises the dungeon's boss. When Link finally obtains the squid carving, allowing access to the ship's control room, it's suddenly and violently attacked, with great tentacles puncturing through the hull. Instead of an immediate boss fight, we have an escape sequence. Link attempts to abandon the sinking vessel as more tentacles tear into the ship, causing it to fill with water and tilt, lamps swinging and barrels rolling through the corridors, as the vessel is slowly dragged into the depths. Fee analyses that, due to the scale of the tentacles, they belong to a monster of considerable size, an unseen behemoth beneath the waves, large enough and powerful enough to tear apart the massive sand ship with ease. Just before Link exits onto the decks of the ship, Fee issues a final warning. An evil presence lurks on the other side of the door, most likely the primary body mass of the creature destroying the ship. Be prepared. Link steps out into the pouring rain, onto the wreckage of the sand ship, torn apart and sinking. Giant tentacles erupt from beneath, surrounding the hero as the music rises, until, all at once, they vanish, and there's a moment of silence before the creature reveals itself. Smash! And here we have Tentalus, probably my least favourite boss design in the entire series, a chubby pink cyclopean Medusa. It's often compared to Celia May from Monsters Inc, and it's clear why. It's not intimidating in the slightest. I know it's shallow to judge a boss almost entirely on its appearance, but it really does take me completely out of the experience. All the tension from before is vaporized instantly upon seeing this thing. Why does it have a little double chin and a pot belly? Why did they give it tentacle dreadlocks? I'll never understand. The fight itself isn't awful by any means. Link must strike the tentacles when the boss attacks from below the ship, then shoot the painfully obvious weak spot of Tentalus' eye, bringing it down and allowing for sword strikes. There's a second phase too, where after taking some damage, the beast goes into a rage, slamming its armed tentacles on the ship's deck and knocking down a crate, allowing Link to access the upper level. The premise of the fight is again the same, just throw everything you have at the beast's eye to bring it down, avoiding attacks like its Medusa hair snakes. While I don't think the boss fight is terrible, I think Tentalus is one of the most underwhelming bosses in the entire series, at least for me. The potential to cap off one of the best dungeons in the game with an equally amazing boss fight was there, with perfect build-up, a perfect dungeon item with which to take one down, and even a perfect title for the boss, Abyssal Leviathan, but I just can't take it seriously whatsoever. Let's continue with the aquatic theme, with Ocarina of Time's Water Temple, which, infamous as it may be, is an incredibly atmospheric, brilliantly themed dungeon. Found at the bottom of the deep Lake Hylia, the temple is described as the home of the monster which caused the Zora's curse, freezing their home solid. The dungeon itself is a multi-leveled labyrinth, where Link can traverse the different floors by raising and lowering the water levels. The Dark Link mini-boss fight is one of the most iconic fights in Zelda, and for good reason. The atmosphere, build-up, and sheer spectacle of dueling your own shadow is perfectly executed, making it one of the most memorable mini-bosses in the series. But the same isn't true for the temple's main boss. Throughout the watery tunnels of the temple, Link repeatedly encounters depictions of serpentine dragons, columns, carvings, even great statues of some reptilian beast. Perhaps the water temple's boss will be a colossal dragon of the deep, a true sea monster, a terrible creature powerful enough to freeze Zora's domain over. When Link enters the boss chamber, the build-up begins. We get a slow camera pan from the perspective of the beast, winding through the water, rising up slowly, high above Link, who turns around to reveal that it's a ball in a tube. That's not quite true, it's an amoeba, a single-celled organism, with its weak spot being its nucleus. But it's a ball in a tube. The signature ability of the giant aquatic amoeba Morpha is its complete control over water, producing tendrils from the depths which lunge at Link, who's able to use the long shot to pull the nucleus from the water and strike at it. If he gets too close, the amoeba will grab him, shaking him for a second before throwing him across the room, but that's about it. Once it's been damaged enough, it'll float into the air and burst into droplets of water. The main tendril will slowly rise to the ceiling, and there's a tense moment when it feels like there might be a second phase of some sort, but no. Morpha collapses inwards into a few droplets of water, and the boss is defeated. An amoeba is an imaginative choice for Morpha's appearance, but it's just so underwhelming in-game. I think it's one of the least visually intimidating bosses in the entire series, and I'm personally normally terrified of water and aquatic creatures. It doesn't really even look like a boss. If Morpha appeared as a mini-boss, or even halfway through the dungeon as a larger regular enemy, I don't think many people would bat an eye. The fight itself isn't the worst in the series by a long way, but it definitely lands on my list of underwhelming Zelda bosses. Before the release of Breath of the Wild, the prospect of the Yiga clan was one of the most exciting elements. A rogue group of Sheikah defected from their tribe, sporting an inverted eye symbol on their masks, a clan of ninja-like warriors, the first truly evil Sheikah in the series. And when the game released, this hype seemed like it was justified. The Yiga appeared across the land, magically disguised as simple travelers, only to reveal themselves as assassins sent to hunt for the hero. The Yiga are split into two separate classes. The agile foot soldiers, who make use of quick, light blade weapons and duplex bows, and the Blade Masters, massive, powerful warriors who wield Windcleaver blades, and can use magic to manipulate the earth. The villainy of the Yiga is explored in one of my favourite side quests in the game, the Stolen Heirloom, where it's revealed that Darian was once a member of their clan, but left due to meeting his wife while undercover in Kakariko village. the Yiga didn't allow this desertion, killing his wife and blackmailing Darian to continue working for them to ensure his children's safety. But despite how skilled and sinister these agents are, they're only workers, in service to the one they call Master. You'd expect the venerated leader of this tribe of corrupted Sheikah to be even more intimidating than the soldiers. We've seen throughout the game how powerful the Sheikah are, with their ancient technology and arcane monks, and here we have the mighty leader of a clan of villainous warriors. Except he's not mighty. He's overweight, clumsy, and ends up accidentally killing himself at the end of the battle. I mean, I get the joke, Zelda often doesn't take itself too seriously, and having the feared leader of this powerful tribe be an idiot goes against all of our expectations, but did they have to play this joke here, with this character? Master Kohga could have been something truly imposing and unique, an evil Sheikah boss, but instead we've got this. The boss fight itself isn't terrible. Link has to defend against Master Kohga's use of what appears to be Sheikah runes, often using his own attacks against him, but it feels so out of place in comparison to the rest of the tribe, who, except for their love of mighty bananas, are portrayed as a pretty serious, dangerous group. Thankfully, the second DLC pack, The Champion's Ballad, gave us a real boss fight against a powerful Sheikah warrior in Monk Maz Koshia, though ultimately it still fell into the category of a trial, a test for the hero issued by someone on your side. I'd have loved to see a serious leader of the Yiga clan, bringing ancient, forbidden Sheikah arts to bear against Link. Demise is the single greatest threat to Hyrule bar none. The ancient king of demons, who tore his way into reality in the distant past, was only sealed by the combined might of the goddess Hylia and the people of the surface. And even millennia after his final defeat at the hands of the hero of the skies, his malice lives on in an eternal cycle. Demise is essentially a dark god, his tall, muscular body covered in black scales, with surging flames flowing from his head in place of hair. Girahim, a powerful demon lord, is nothing but Demise's sword, a mere tool used by the King of Darkness. When Demise was defeated by the goddess Hylia, the seal placed upon him stripped him of his true form, forcing him to take on the shape of an abomination, the Imprisoned. This is such a cool concept, the most evil being in reality, trapped in a towering, monstrous form as a result of the seal that binds him. But in game, it's impossible to take it seriously. He's often called the avocado, and you can see why. It's a mouth on these cute little stubby legs with giant egg toes? It almost improves in its second form where it develops arms, but even these have these bizarre little egg-like digits at the end. And his third form, which adds a tail and occasionally an admittedly cool dark halo, still doesn't improve things much. Lackluster boss design in Skyward Sword is one of the game's main issues for me, but even without its hilarious looking appearance, the Imprisoned's boss battles just aren't great. Again, the concept is awesome. The beast breaks free from its seal, slowly moving towards the temple, and must be stopped before it reaches its destination, otherwise it means the end of the world. But in execution, the fight is a slog. The Imprisoned waddles slowly through the sealed grounds, looking like an oversized plushie, while Link is tasked with hammering the sealing spike back into its skull, either by landing on its head or felling it by cutting its weird little toes. The fights in which Groose, along with the Gruesinator, aid in the battle are marginally better, as firing bombs at the monster is admittedly pretty satisfying, as is launching onto its head as it levitates out of the pit, but overall, I can't help but feel there's so much missed potential for this fight against the Imprisoned Demon King. It doesn't help that we fight the Imprisoned 3 separate times. The fights improve as they go, with the third being the most dynamic and interesting battle, but it feels incredibly repetitive, which is a shame considering how badass the concept of desperately stopping this unimaginably powerful monster from escaping the pit and ending the world is. Before we get into the probably obvious final pick, let's run through a couple of dishonourable mentions. The anglerfish from Link's Awakening is probably the single easiest 2D Zelda boss. Seriously, I don't really know how this boss is meant to damage you. There are smaller fish which you can take some damage from, and if it charges a wall, there's falling debris which deals damage. The boss's weak spot is the glowing lure, which means you can just stay above it and swing your sword repeatedly and it'll die insanely quick. Link's Awakening has some really cool bosses, but the anglerfish isn't one of them. Luckily, the remaster upped the difficulty somewhat, but it's still painfully easy if fought correctly. The Wind Waker's Earth Temple is one of my favourite Zelda dungeons, an eerie crypt crawling with the undead. Link must progress through the temple by using light, reflected from either Medley's harp or the mirror shield. It's one of the most atmospheric dungeons in the series, haunting and isolated, so you'd expect the boss to continue this theme. But the boss, Jalhalla, just looks like a fat genie, and is one of the easiest boss fights in the series to boot. Shine light on its body to stun it, throw it into the spikes, and take out the individual pose. Not particularly intimidating. The original Zelda game is one of the more difficult games in the series, in part due to how much it leaves up to the player to discover, with no handholding. But not only is exploration somewhat difficult, the game's enemies are too, especially screens full of powerful enemies like Darknuts. But what's not difficult to kill are some of the game's bosses, like Goma, which just takes one arrow in the eye to kill. However, worst of all is Digdogger, apparently an oversized sea urchin which moves around the room, damaging Link if he comes into contact with it. But this isn't really even a boss fight. If you play the recorder, Digdogger shrivels up, now incredibly easy to finish off with your sword. If you know how to beat this boss, it's even easier to defeat than the anglerfish. Here it is, the one you were expecting. The climax of the single most ambitious game in the Zelda series, a showdown against the pure, unrestrained hatred of the Calamity Ganon, a being which single-handedly caused an apocalypse a century earlier. Like many of the bosses on this list, the build-up to the Dark Beast Ganon fight is painfully cool. After besting the Calamity itself in a one-on-one duel deep below Hyrule Castle, it finally sheds its physical form, materializing in Hyrule Field as a titan of pure hatred. Princess Zelda teleports you to the battlefield, alongside your horse, and Link turns slowly around to see the gargantuan shadow of malice behind him, congealing into a solid, defined form as Ganon's theme plays. Zelda's voice echoes, "If this monster is set free, the destruction will be unlike anything seen before, dwarfing even the Calamity itself, which had laid the world to ruin." The princess entrusts Link with a powerful bow of light, and as the main theme swells, we hear one of the single greatest lines in Zelda.
But courage need not be remembered, for it is never forgotten.
And so the battle begins. But as anyone who's played Breath of the Wild knows, the fight doesn't live up to the monumental expectations the game built up. The Dark Beast stays relatively still in the center of the field, moving very slowly only to try and face Link, and attacks with a powerful but incredibly predictable beam. It's so slow, so telegraphed, that for the longest time I thought it was attacking the land itself or something rather than Link. But Link's retaliation isn't much more exciting. Zelda uses her sacred powers to project weak spots on the body of the Dark Beast, glowing circles which must be pierced with a bow of light or another divine weapon. But as I said, Ganon doesn't really move, letting you gallop around it freely and take aim at the weak spots. After a few sets of these targets, Ganon opens up a large Eye of Malice, conveniently accompanied with a huge updraft, and Link must shoot the eye to end the fight. There's a minigame in the Farron region run by Genie, where Link must ride a horse through the course, popping target balloons with his bow. And it's far harder than the final apocalyptic battle against a colossal, enraged demon beast. Seriously, it's clear that the fight against the Dark Beast is more of a symbolic final end to the Calamity, almost more of a cutscene than a boss fight, but the incredible build-up, the gargantuan, imposing design of the beast itself, accompanied by one of the best final boss themes in the series, just isn't backed up by the fight itself. It's one of the easiest, most straightforward battles in all of Zelda. I genuinely don't think I've ever taken damage from Dark Beast Ganon, and unless your horse crashes into something, I really don't see how it's possible to get hit, while you calmly trot around the monster and take pot shots at its weak spots. I'm glad we're seeing a return of Ganondorf in the sequel, because this isn't the ending the King of Darkness deserves. Thanks for watching this video. I know there was a lot of Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword in this video, games which I adore, but just felt underwhelmed by in the boss department for the most part. Let me know in the comments down below which Zelda bosses you thought were a letdown, and if I insulted any of your favourite bosses, let me know about that too. If you like this video, leave a like, or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.